Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us today. Well, I've got another pistol video for you here, and this one is once again by request. Had some viewers that have been asking for us to get to some of the Ruger semi-auto pistols, and in the interest of addressing that, we're going to start our Ruger journey today with the Security 9. Now, Ruger's has been making pistols and rifles for a long time. And they're a very well-established company. I actually have got several rifles of theirs and revolvers. And I haven't gotten into the Ruger semi-autos as of yet, so this is a new journey for me as well. And you look at the Security 9, and as you're going to find out, it's very similar in size and capacity to the Glock 19. And for those of you that are used to a gun like that, you might ask yourself, well, why would I look at the Security 9 when I can just have a Glock 19? Well, I've got some good answers to that because the Security 9 actually offers quite a few features for the money, and we're going to talk about those features and whether this is a good choice for concealed carry in just a minute. Once again, welcome back. We appreciate you joining us here today. Well, if this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've been watching our videos and you just haven't had a chance to do so, if you wouldn't mind, find that right-hand lower portion of your computer screen there. If you can hit that subscribe button for us, or if you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video and hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. It'll let you know whenever we do something new, which helps us out a lot, and we really, really appreciate it. So, Ruger Security 9. I've been getting a lot of requests for some of these Ruger semi-auto pistols, and Ruger's been making rifles and pistols, revolvers, and semi-autos for a long time, and they've got a lot of stuff in their lineup that I think is really, really good. I own several Ruger firearms myself. I haven't really gotten into the semi-automatics at this point, and so this is a new journey for me too. So I thought we'd start with the Security 9, since it's one of the ones that people are asking for, and we'll kind of go from there. So, looking at this firearm, we always like to start off with a little size comparison, just to give you some scale for carry. And, you have to forgive me, I know we use the Glock 19 a lot for size comparisons, but we do that because the Glock 19 is, one of the most popular handguns in the world, and has been for a long time. And the dimensions are pretty predictable and well known on it. But if you don't know, just to give you a quick little overview here, you can see that the length of the slide, you can look at that. You can see the dimension from the top of the slide to the bottom of the magazine, and of course the width. If you look across the top of the slide here, you can see the width of the firearm. And all these things are important, of course, because we talk about accuracy and reliability from a firearm, but comfort is a big deal because you're putting a couple of pounds to carry on your hip for protection, and the bulkiness and the way it actually feels on you makes a big difference in whether you're actually going to be able to carry the weapon or not. So, having said that, the Security 9 is very similar as far as its overall dimensions with the Glock 19, and oddly enough, they hold the same amount of ammunition. These are both 9mm firearms with 15-round magazines, and so when you add the additional in the chamber, that gives you a total of 16 rounds. You can see the Glock there has a 15-round magazine, and then the Ruger has the same. And the Ruger does give you two. So we'll show you that there. So that's kind of nice. But looking at them, once again, they're very similar as far as dimension. When you get to the grip, that's where things are a little bit different. The Glock 19 has changeable back straps on the grip. Now, even before they had these, the grip when it was just a fixed size, was bigger than the Ruger. And the only reason why that matters is because if you pick this gun up and you hold it in your hand, well, it's going to affect your grip of the gun. Like, I have pretty good sized hands, and you can see my fingers come all the way around when I'm holding the gun. So it's just a different feel on the gun than if you're holding a firearm that has a thicker, or if you've made it thicker by using the back strap. As you can see, my fingers don't come nearly as far back, and so they're not in the way, as you can see, of the other hand when I'm gripping the firearm. Now, that may not make any difference for most people, may not make any difference for you, but it's just something I want you to see because it helps you understand the overall scale. But if you look at them, of course, from the top, you can see that they are very similar as far as the thickness of the firearm. And if you compare them, looking at them from the back, from the sight picture down to the grip, you can see they are practically the same height from the sights down to the bottom of the magazine. So just kind of looking it over, you can see it's very, very similar in size. So if you're used to carrying a firearm like the Glock 19 or something similar in size, it gives you a pretty good idea that the Security 9 is going to feel the same way. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the features, because there's lots to talk about here. Before we get too far along in the features, let's just take a moment. We really want to thank our friends over at Dawn's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of this Ruger Security 9. Dawn's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we cannot thank them enough for their contributions. So, let's take a look at this bad boy. You may have noticed right away, just from looking at the firearm, we compared it with the Glock 19, and so you might think that this is a striker-fired pistol, but it's actually not. This actually has a protected internal hammer, and it's got a bladed safety trigger that work together. And there's a few other firearms I've seen that have that internal hammer style. And supposedly, according to Ruger, the idea behind this is it's supposed to make the manipulation of the slide, racking the slide, is supposed to be a little bit easier compared to a lot of the striker-fired pistols. To me, it feels very similar to racking a slide on a Glock. So that may mean something to you, and it may not, but it's just a feature. Going across the top, let's go ahead and look at the sights here, because it features what should be very familiar to a lot of you, and that's this little U channel with the white dot. And the reason that looks familiar is because that's what your standard Glock is going to have out of the box. It's a little U-channel white sight, just like that. And of course, you can change these out with a variety of other sights. But there's one advantage to the Ruger, and they actually give you an adjustable rear sight. So if you want to make those little changes when you get this thing out of the box, take a couple of shots, you can actually just loosen your little screw there and do what you got to do. It does have an accessory rail. So if you're the kind of individual that likes to put lights and lasers on your firearm, whether it's for home use or for concealed carry, you can certainly do that. It does have a manual safety. Now, I'm not a big fan of manual safeties. Not knocking anybody who is. It's just not something I like to have on my guns. And that's really going to be my one complaint on this firearm is it's kind of it's a really stiff manipulation on that safety. And it's also kind of weird, the positioning. Most of your safeties are used to, sweeping down kind of this way, and to set it, you kind of come the other way. Well, this one, you got to put the pressure on the rear to set it. And so it's not terribly complicated. It's just feels a little different than most manual safeties, and it's something you're going to want to practice with, to make sure you're good at it. Which you would do anyway, of course, as a responsible gun owner. You'd make sure that you understand how to work all the different features of your firearm. So once again, let's talk about the trigger. And before I do that, let me just pull the magazine out here and let everybody see, of course, that we are safe and clear. You can see the feed ramp there, so we're totally empty and safe. So when you pull the trigger on this thing, the trigger is pretty crisp, and it's not a bad feeling trigger. Now, my experience is that the reset on this is a little long. If you watch this here, it comes out pretty good way. We're almost all the way out before we get a reset on that trigger. Now, does that matter? Well, in a lot of cases, for some people, it may not. It's just something to talk about. Now, if you're at the range, if you're doing a lot of shooting, a lot of follow-up shots, your trigger reset might matter because, of course, that has to do with how far you've got to travel back out before you can take another shot. For just basic operation of the handgun, it doesn't matter at all. And for some people, the time between shots also doesn't really make that much of a difference. So it may be something that you don't care about at all, but it's just something to keep in mind, because if you compare, there are some other handguns that are similar, that the reset is a bit shorter. So if that's the kind of thing that is important to you, just keep in mind this does have kind of a long reset on it. Of course, you got your magazine release here. You've got an area, it's kind of a small button, but it's pretty easy to manipulate. It's not really a problem. The magazines fit pretty snugly into the weapon. They have taken the time to put an indention. If you look here, you can see that this gets, it indents down toward the bottom of the mag well there, and there's also an indention in the magazine, so if you need to get it out, you can use that to grip and strip the magazine out of the weapon. So they thought about that, which is kind of nice in the design. You got some pretty good texturing all the way around, on the back, sides, and the front, and you've even got little grooves in the front of the trigger guard. And it feels pretty good. This texturing feels very similar to what you get on a SIG, what they're doing with their texturing these days. So it's really, really not that bad. So, like I said before, slide, stop, and release. It's not bad. It feels like it's, put together well. It's very solid. The parts, there's not a lot of play and slop in the gun. This is a black oxide hardened alloy steel slide and barrel, which is supposed to give you, a lot of hours of use. One of Ruger's, selling points is that they're very rugged, very durable firearms, and so the Security 9's been made to do the same thing, and that's going to be your basic set of features for the Security 9. Alright, so let's talk about the range. This is always an area that will help you decide, whether something's going to be for you or not, because we can talk about features all day long, but of course when you actually get out there and shoot the gun, that's where you find out whether it's a good fit for you or not. For the purposes of this test, I did my shooting with several different types of ammo. I used the S&B here as far as range ammo. I also was using PMC. I've had pretty good luck with that cartridge as well. And I tested various defensive rounds through the weapon. Used a Sig Sauer V-Crown. This particular one is 115 grain. I also used some of the Barnes TAC-X PD, and I also used some Critical Duty. So, and the reason I did that is because I like to get as many different types of ammo through the firearm just to make sure that it's not finicky, because often, you'll run a lot of rounds through a new gun and find out it is a little bit finicky. So, out of the box, running various range ammo, I was actually surprised in how well the gun shoots. Like I said, the trigger reset was a little bit long, but as far as the trigger and how the trigger feels, it's got a pretty decent trigger on it. And I feel like that the way the weapon responds, the recoil, and the way it feels in your hand, it's very similar to shooting a Glock 19. The only difference that I noticed between this and a Glock 19 is this trigger, to me, feels just a little bit heavier than the Glock trigger, but not by much. It felt like that this trigger was taking a little bit longer to break than a Glock trigger did, and of course it's got a little bit longer reset. But that did not really seem to make any difference as far as shooting the firearm. My first magazine was a pretty decent grouping, within a couple of inches. And like I said, this is at 21 feet. I believe that for me, that's a standard distance, defensive distance that I practice at. So the first magazine, we were inside a nice little sub 2-inch group, and then almost immediately we're under an inch, and that's with me not making any adjustments to the sights. That's just me pulling it out and just kind of adjusting my fire as I'm watching rounds hit the paper. So it's a pretty predictable shooting weapon, and I didn't have any failures of any kind, and that's with using any of the defensive rounds that we talked about. It ran through everything I gave it, which is kind of nice. And of course, I have 2 magazines, so what I did is I just alternated one magazine of defensive rounds with a magazine of practice ammo, and just kept moving along through there, and throughout the day, it did really well. Handed off to some new shooters, of course, like we always do, to see what they think about it, and it seemed to be a pretty easy to shoot little gun. The safety was something that people were having to try to get used to, especially new shooters, because they're kind of coming at in a weird way. Most safeties, I'm used to, sweeping in a particular way, and this one, having to manipulate it from the rear, it's just kind of weird, the way it feels. But like I said, it's not really that bad. It's just you have to put the pressure up from this side rather than just coming straight up and down. But having said all that, if you get that figured out, which is not too tough, it's a pretty good shooting gun. About 500 rounds in total, and no stoppages, no problems. Shoots pretty well, pretty good grouping right away, and the gun feels pretty good in your hand. Sometimes when you shoot a gun for a long time, it'll start to bother your hand a little bit just because of the felt recoil, and it manages the recoil pretty good. So overall, it did really well at the range, accurate, reliable, and pretty comfortable. So what's it like to carry the Ruger Security 9? Well, as a person who's carried a lot of different firearms, including a lot of what to me are larger firearms like USB Compact and Glock 19 and SIG M11A1. I mean, I've carried a variety of guns that I think are a lot bigger than the little offerings that you can get today. Like I said, the Glock 19 and its brother, the little 23, I have carried, I can't tell you how many times. I've carried it so much that, my favorite holster shows a lot of wear from having carried the gun so many times. So, for the Security 9, I thought I'd try something that I was trying with the Glocks as well. I did use the crossbreed holsters a lot, but I also carry often, like I say, in the sticky holster. It depends on how I'm dressed. But the comfort of the stickies is great. So I went into my extensive collection of sticky holsters, and as it turns out, a LG2 is a perfect fit for the Security 9. Now, once again, I talk about these holsters, and they're not right for everything. And you got to remember, this is not a holster that's going to give you any retention. Now, I tried this in my little crossbreed too, and obviously that's going to have Kydex and leather, and it's going to be a little more secure. And if you want that type of retention, get something like an Alienware or a crossbreed or anything that's going to give you that type of grab where you have a little resistance to take it out. But these are good options, for people who like to carry a little bit more comfortably, and they have the kind of situational awareness that they kind of know where their gun's positioned in the waistband all the time, and they feel comfortable with that type of carry. You got to remember, this is all about what you're going to feel good with. But the other good thing about these is that this is a gun that can be carried by anybody. Ladies, if you like the feel of Security 9, this is a good way to secure the gun if it goes into a purse where the trigger guard's covered, that type of thing. On smaller versions, this even helps with pocket carry. This is obviously a bit much for, pocket carry, but the smaller versions are good for that. But carrying the Security 9 in a sticky is super, super nice. Once you get it down in there and get your waistband adjusted, you have just a small amount of grip, and I carry mine with a slight cant. It's very comfortable. I carried this firearm for days with a lot of regularity, and it just, as far as the weight, like I said, I was always comfortable carrying a Glock 19 this way, and the Security 9 felt the exact same way. I've actually got another holster ordered for this one right now that has got a little more solid retention, because I want to try out something that has a good locking mechanism and all that kind of good stuff. I'll do a follow-up on that. But using what was on hand, very comfortable, very easy to manage. And the fact that everything is so slimline on the firearm, there is nothing that was poking me, that was against the body that was uncomfortable while I was carrying the firearm. So as far as comfort goes, it did very well. So overall impressions of the Ruger Security 9. Well, I try to take as honest of an approach as I can on stuff like this. And if you're looking for a handgun that's got good capacity, in this case, 15 rounds in the magazine plus one in the chamber, which is the exact same as a Glock 19. The question you have to ask yourself is, well, why would I buy one over the other? Well, these two are very similar in size. They feel similar to carry. And of course, they hold the same amount of ammo. Now, the Ruger, the MSRP on these guns, there's, over $100 difference less with the Ruger than with the Glock. And for some people, that'll make a big difference. Some people, their budget is not going to be this. It's certainly not going to be, $1,000 or $1,200 gun. So if budget is important to you and you want a gun that's pretty good shooting with good capacity that seems to be very reliable, well, this is not a bad choice. And plus, out of the box, you've got an adjustable rear sight, which is really nice. And, if you're the kind of person that likes having a safety on a gun, you've got one. If you don't want to use the safety, of course, you don't have to operate it. But, and the safety, as I said, is really the only thing about the firearm that's not my favorite, just because it's kind of weird to manipulate. And, of course, I don't like safeties on my guns anyway. That's just me. But if you want a firearm that's pretty safe, that's pretty well made, that's pretty durable, it ended up being pretty accurate, and it was reliable with the ammo, and it's comfortable to carry. And the three things I always talk about is accuracy, reliability, and comfort. And the Security 9 does all three. I was actually surprised at how comfortable it was to carry, but it was. And I was also very surprised at how well it performed at the range as far as not being picky with any type of ammunition, and I didn't experience any failures with the firearm. So if you're looking at an option that can be used good as a concealed carry gun and as a home defense gun, because it's good size for both, the Security 9 is a decent option. Like I said, the price difference between this and the Glock is notable. And for some people, that's going to make a difference. So anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up. We really appreciate you, as always, joining us. We're going to be back very soon with another video for you. And until that time, as always, we just ask everybody to be careful out there. And we'll be back very soon. And thanks again. Have a good day.